Well, good afternoon, everyone. As the pandemic has continued to unfold, people have been very clear that they expect us to focus on two vital priorities. First and foremost, they expect us to protect people's health. And second, they expect us to protect our economy. That is exactly what this budget does. Ontario's total response to COVID-19 is now $51 billion. Ontario's focus since March 2020 has been to do whatever it takes to keep the people of Ontario safe. The 2021 budget brings the total government investment to protect people's health to $16.3 billion. And here are some of the highlights. It starts with $1 billion of investment in vaccines. This is our top priority, full stop. While vaccines are rolling out, our government is making new investments to ramp up testing and accelerating our long-standing work to build, expand, and improve hospitals across the province over the next 10 years. What happened in long-term care homes during the pandemic exposed a tragedy that has been decades in the making. I think that we can all agree that the tragedy was a result of years of neglect and underfunding in long-term care. The inaction stops with us. To protect our loved ones in long-term care from the deadly COVID-19 virus, our government is making further investments to prevent the spread of the virus. Build new beds across the province. Increase quality of care by ensuring residents receive an average of 4 hours of direct care per day. And accelerate the training of personal support workers, or PSWs. The second pillar in our plan builds on this significant support for families, workers, and employers in all of Ontario. 2021 budget brings the total government investment to protect Ontario's economy to $23.3 billion. Now, our government is making childcare more accessible and affordable through direct and meaningful relief that puts more money in the pockets of parents and provides parents with flexibility. We are creating jobs in skilled trades while helping workers explore opportunities in a new industry with the proposed Ontario Jobs Training Tax Credit for 2021. And in January, this past January, to help small businesses face additional expenses and more pressure, we announced the Ontario Small Business Support Grant for employers affected by the province-wide shutdown. And today, we're announcing a second payment of the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, along with the new Ontario Tourism and Hospitality Small Business Support Grant, targeted specifically at some of the hardest hit businesses, including hotels, overnight summer camps, and amusement parks. As the Minister of Finance and as the President of the Treasury Board, my job is to ensure we make every resource available to win the battle against the virus. And we have. The Ontario government is projecting to spend $173 billion in 2021-22. When you consider that the government spent $148.8 billion in 2018-2019, it is clear that we have spared no expense to defeat COVID-19. Of course, as it has for governments around the world, this spending has resulted in record deficits. We project the deficit will be $33.1 billion in 2021-22. And while this level of debt is neither sustainable nor desirable forever, I am absolutely, unequivocally convinced it is necessary to get through the pandemic and to recover stronger. This budget is making good on our commitment to do whatever it takes to keep the people safe, while building on the foundation to create the growth we need for a strong economy. In the coming months, as vaccinations are rolled out and we turn the corner on the pandemic, our government will build on our plan to create strong economic growth. Our recovery will be built on a strong foundation for growth, not cuts or tax hikes. Hope is on the horizon. It's months, not years away. Until then, we will maintain our unwavering commitment to protect people's health and their jobs. And now I'll be happy to take any questions.
So we'll go to the phone line now. One question, one follow-up. First question from Sean Jeffers at the Canadian Press.
Good afternoon, Minister. I wanted to ask you about the pandemic spending as it relates to education funding. It doesn't seem like there's a lot in here for schools and pandemic measures in them. Why is that, given that it would seem that there will still be increased pandemic costs in the education sector in 2021 because of the continuation of the pandemic?
Well, firstly, getting children and students into class safely has been a top priority for our government. And we've heard it from parents, we've heard it from many that they wanted their children back in the classroom, but safely. And so we spent $1.6 billion so far, including this calendar year for the calendar school year, to make sure that they could come back safely. We've invested in making sure that the staffing is there, make sure that the cleaning is there, made sure that the testing, the public health nurses. And we continue to invest in the education system by providing rapid testing because we want them to continue safely being in school. Of course, it's not just physically being in school, but it's also having the online option. So we're investing another $40 million here for online virtual learning so that we can improve and give the quality of online learning up over time as we continue to provide options and worry about what's around the corner. I would also say that very much so the next year that the funding goes up by 2.3%, and we'll continue to make investments to allow our children to be safe in schools. And a big thank you to really all the teachers, all the support staff, the students, and the parents, particularly for their dedication to ensuring their children have a strong education.
Follow-up?
And Minister, if I could follow up on the path to balance. I know this government's plan to balance the budget has been pretty dramatically altered by the pandemic, but this path to balance laid out in this document would require the government to be re-elected twice to achieve it. Is that a credible plan?
What is credible is today, and I'm really focused on the job today, and this budget, you could call it a pandemic budget, I call it a budget to do whatever it takes to protect the health of every Ontarian and to support jobs in our economy. Sean, I think it's so critically important. We haven't beat this virus yet. We are pulling out all the stops to defeat this virus, and this government will ensure that and as Minister of Finance, provide the resources to our government to make sure we finish the job. And the job isn't finished. We've now got something like almost 1.7 million people in this province vaccinated. We want to put a vaccine in every arm of every Ontarian who wants a vaccine, and that's the job that we're focused on, and that's the job that I'm going to continue supporting.
Next question.
From Antonella Artuso at Toronto Sun.
Hello, thank you, Minister. I wanted to ask you about the level of debt the province is going to be accruing over the next little while. It's going to top $500 billion. So I'm wondering what plan there is to sort of address that rather than just paying interest payments.
Well, thank you for the question, and it's a good one to note, because we are incurring debt not just to fund the deficits, to increase the spending in healthcare and supporting jobs, but we're also making investments, just not for now, but for the long term. So unprecedented investments in hospitals and long-term care, mental health and addiction, particularly as well support for women, domestic abuse and anti-human trafficking. So we'll continue to make those investments, because that's not only good social policy, but that's good economic policy. Because I always say you can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. So this level of debt, as I've said, is not sustainable in the long term. With lower interest rates right now, it's very manageable. And the best thing we can do is get everyone vaccinated in this province and then reopen the economy. And I'm really betting on the people of Ontario that we'll grow our economy when we get to the other side of this pandemic and create jobs like we were doing before the pandemic, and we most surely will do after.
Follow-up?
Thank you. And when do you think we'll get to the other side of this pandemic from the economy's perspective?
Well, I think the best antidote for opening up the economy is getting vaccines in arms. And I thank General Rick Hillier. I thank Sylvia Jones and Christine Elliott and Premier Doug Ford from day one, who said we're going to do everything we can to distribute the vaccines as soon as they hit our shores. We've had a few bumps in getting the vaccines into the province. I know the federal government is working overtime to get us those vaccines. And we're set up. We've got mass vaccination clinics. In fact, I was in one yesterday in Scarborough. What a great facility they've set. All the people that are servicing that vaccination center, what a great, incredible group of people to administer those vaccines, the logistics that go into that. And we're putting those right across the province, putting them through pharmacies, through physicians. We announced yesterday that we put funding in place so that we'll make sure transportation is available for our seniors who don't have sometimes the ability to get to a vaccination appointment. So we're pulling out all the stops because the quickest path to recovering and growing our economy will be when it's safe to reopen, and we're not there yet. This government's going to, and this finance minister and this premier and this government's going to finish the job.
Next question.
From Steve Paikin at TVO. Please go ahead.
Minister, you say that you are counting on the people of Ontario to grow the economy so significantly that you won't have to raise taxes or cut spending. And yet, in the out years going forward, you look like you have very modest growth rates projected. So how does all that add up?
Well, thank you, Steve, for that question. So the way it adds up is that we have expenditures. I want to make this very clear that expenditures do go up every year. I said that there would be no cuts, and this budget very clearly demonstrates that. We also have projections on the economy that, I'm betting on the people of Ontario. We've got an incredible talent base in this province. We've got a world-class education system, both post-secondary and post-secondary. We've got an incredible environment to grow the economy, and Steve, I just believe that we can be world-beating again as we were before the pandemic. I also think there's opportunities on the modernization. As you know, I'm very big on the digital. I want to make everything digital in government as we deliver services, because that leads to a better experience. It's more efficient. And just last week I put out a note to all people in government that I'm axing the facts. Axe the facts. Just think of it. We still have machines. The question should be, what, we still have machines? Yes, we do. I found that out. So there's machines. You put paper in it for those who may not remember a fax machine. So modernization, delivering services and programs. We've got incredible digital talent. And so we'll be able to do that. And then finally, Steve, I really think when you look at our Canada Health transfers to support the healthcare system in Ontario, if you go back to when it was created, and of course you love history as much as I do, when it was set up, it was 50% funded by the federal government, this is Medicare, and 50% funded by the province. Now lots has happened since then, and I can say today, and right across the country, the federal fair share of that funding has gone way down. In fact, in Ontario, we're about 22%. So instead of being at 50, we're at 22. So I'm calling on the federal government. I think this is a nation-building moment. We can put healthcare on a long-term, sustainable footing if we just are bold enough to say, let's fix the Canada Health transfer. Let's make sure that we invest in our people, both for healthcare, for mental health and addiction, and also for long-term care. We have that opportunity right now.
Follow-up?
Okay, so since you accurately note how much I love history, if I read the budget speech correctly, you thanked the leader of the opposition in your budget speech, and I don't ever remember that happening before. Why are you doing that?
Well, many reasons, because I'll be acknowledging the great contributions of women. Women have been disproportionately impacted in this pandemic. I think that's why I'm also with Jill Dunlop, who's our minister in charge of women and children's issues. I'm going to co-chair a task force because this is an opportunity to really hear from all our great women leaders across the province to talk about the barriers they face in terms of economic growth, economic opportunity, some of the supports that we can put in place. So I'm very excited about that, and I think I like to point to, among others, Andrew Horwath, a leader of a party who holds our government to account, and I'm a big believer in democracy, and that's sort of just like the media, the fifth estate, an opposition. I'm out here every 90 days to tell the people of Ontario not only how the money, where we spent the money, but how we spent the money, transparency and accountability. I really believe that, and that makes our system work, and I just want to acknowledge her as well as some of the other great women who are leading this province.
Next question.
From Mike Crawley at CBC News. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, Mike. Unmute your line.
Well, if I had a nickel for every time I had the mute button on, I'd be very wealthy.
Yeah.
No
Go to the
response?
next question.
We might not have a debt, yeah.
Moving on to the next question from Robert Benzie, Toronto Star.
Oh, hi, Minister. I was just looking in your budget documents, and there's 40 mentions of highways, and yet no mention of the most infamous highway in Ontario right now, Highway 413, which of course is very unpopular. That's the highway that runs from Vaughan to Caledon to Milton. I'm just wondering if the fact that it's not mentioned in the budget suggests that it is going the way of the dodo bird and it will not be around.
Well, thanks, Rob. And what I would say is this: the environmental assessment is being conducted now. I've not set any money aside for any highway. I want to hear, like everybody else, the results of the environmental assessment. We want to hear from people. I know many are calling. Many had originally supported it. Some are calling not to go forward. So we want to hear from everybody. I think that's the prudent thing to do, and let the environmental assessment take place first.
You don't have any money in the budget for it is that this thing is basically on life support. So you don't it's not worth putting money aside in the off chance that you'll like the environmental assessment. This thing's a goner, isn't it? Really.
What I'm saying, Rob, is that we put money. There's an environmental assessment process. I like to not only have the evidence and the facts and the scientific information, but I also believe strongly from hearing from everybody. So before that happens, there's no point in putting any money aside.
Next question.
From Julianne Lamoureux, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, c'est Bethlenfalvy. J'aimerais vous entendre en français. Vous dites que la vaccination, c'est votre priorité absolue. Vous investissez $1 milliard. Or, il semble que l'objectif de donner une première dose à tout le monde avant la fin juin soit compromis. Qu'est-ce que vous dites aux Ontariens? Parce que vous dites d'un côté, c'est essentiel pour la relance de l'économie, la vaccination, mais de l'autre, vous dites, on n'atteindra peut-être pas nos objectifs.
Merci, Julianne. Bien sûr, comme j'avais dit avant, la tâche numéro 1 de notre gouvernement est protéger la santé et les emplois des Ontariens. Et nous avons un plan pour que tout le monde qui veut un vaccin contre la COVID-19 vont l'avoir. Alors, aujourd'hui, j'ai dit qu'il y a à peu près 1,7 million de personnes ici en Ontario qui avaient le vaccin. Et puis, il y a beaucoup plus à faire. Alors, on va continuer avec cette plan. Et j'ai de l'espoir que dans quelques mois, quand on a le vaccin partout, on va commencer notre plan pour réouvrir l'économie.
Ce sera un très long chemin vers le retour à l'équilibre budgétaire. Ça pourrait prendre même 10 ans si la croissance va au ralenti. Est-ce que vous êtes trop prudent? Est-ce que c'est la bonne vieille tactique de on met les objectifs bas puis on va se féliciter quand on va les dépasser?
Oui, c'est vraiment aujourd'hui un budget pour la pandémie. Et la tâche n'est pas, comme j'ai dit, la tâche n'est pas encore terminée. Et alors, premièrement, il faut protéger, comme j'ai dit, la santé des Ontariens et puis aussi les emplois. le budget à long terme, ça c'est vraiment c'est quelque chose qui est très important. Mais actuellement, le but, la tâche numéro 1, comme j'ai dit, est protéger la santé et les emplois des Ontariens. Et on n'est pas encore terminé cette tâche.
Next question.
From Josh Rubin at the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. I've got two slightly related questions. The first one on the tourism industry grant. I'm just wondering why it's just the one tranche as opposed to the small business grant, which you now unveil the second tranche for. Any particular reason you're not kind of giving a second amount to the tourism industry folks? I mean, like, why not just make it like a one-time, 40 grand cap?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and I'll answer it two ways. First of all, the Ontario Small Business Grant Program, that was primarily for companies that were affected, had to shut down because of the lockdown and or severely restricted. We hope to have, I think we're close to 100,000 businesses who have successfully applied, and we've set aside $1.7 billion for that. So that's going to continue on March 31st, and then we'll give double that money to that existing cohort, putting aside $3.4 billion. And let me tell you, I've heard from so many businesses in Ontario that this is the difference between keeping the lights on and turning them off for good. The tourism and hospitality new program, separate grant, is targeted. It's a new cohort of businesses who have been allowed to remain open, so they weren't affected by the lockdown as much. However, their customers haven't been there, like really impacting them. So we're going through the program design. We've highlighted in the budget some of the types of businesses that will be eligible for that, and I'm very excited about that. And let me also say this. We also have the $100 million tourism recovery program, which will help larger companies. And in total, this budget targets $400 million for the tourism and hospitality sector. And if you combine it with the budget from, doesn't seem that long ago, that's almost $625 million for the tourism and hospitality. And they've been hit hard. So we want to support those that were completely locked down and support those highly affected.
Follow-up?
Okay, you spoke about, companies that weren't affected quite as much by the lockdowns, but still had, their customers disappearing. I mean, I've spoken to some dry cleaners over the last few weeks, and, they've been allowed to stay open the entire time, but I don't know the last time anybody, dry cleaned a suit or a shirt. Was there any kind of discussion or thought given to expanding the eligibility for the small business grant?
Let me tell you that, let me say firstly that small businesses are really the economic engine of this province, and they're often the identity of our communities. What we've tried to do and what we're doing is providing support for a multitude of businesses across the province through a multitude of programs. And not all businesses have been affected. As you know, some have unfortunately gone out of business, and that's what we're trying to prevent. We want them to be able to continue to survive, so that when we can reopen the economy, that they'll be able to prosper. Let me also say this is a grant, which is so important, $10,000 to $20,000, which we're now doubling. You can use that for anything. And across the province, and I've heard relative to federal programs that there are conditions attached, so getting an unconditional amount of money from the province to be able to pay down debt, to hire more people, get more PPE, invest in equipment, whatever is appropriate for your business. This has been very helpful, and that's why we're really announcing this today to continue to support our incredible small businesses in this province.
Next question.
From Dave Woodard at Global News Radio 640.
Good afternoon, Minister. Paid sick days were not in the budget, despite the Associate Chief Medical Officer of Health saying previously that they were needed. Why is there nothing on paid sick days in this budget?
Well, as we said, first off, I want to just thank all the incredible, hardworking people in this province who each and every day go and do their job so that they can put food on their table and pay the rent. And so I very much understand some of the struggles that people have. Also that we want to have programs in place and supports in place that encourage people to get a test. So what we are doing is making aware the federal program, which we played a role in negotiating for right across Canada. That program exists. It's over $1 billion, and there's, at last count, over $700 million available. This is a program for 20 paid sick days that you can apply. Now, I've gone on the website. Check out the website. It's very easy to use. It's digital. You can have money in your bank account within 3 days. So what I think is, let's not confuse everybody. There's money available. There's a great program. It encourages people to get tested. And I would go a step further. We've also invested in what we call isolation centers right across the hot zones, and that means repurposed hotels. I've got one in Durham, in Oshawa, Holiday Inn, which some of people in Durham have used to isolate for 2 weeks. If they can't isolate at home for whatever reason, we'll put you up for 2 weeks for accommodations and food. And so we're pulling out all the stops to support everyone.
And clarification, the 20% care tax credit enhancement in the budget, is that new spending that's been announced?
Yes, that is. That should support about 300,000 families. You know, as I mentioned in my remarks, you know, we want to provide support to families, support to parents, support to women. So this is a child tax credit that we've had before. It's the care tax credit, and we've increased it doubled it to 20%. The average family will be that means an average family will go from about $1,250 to $1,500 of support, and that's just identical to the program we have. We're just topping it up.
Next question.
From Rob Ferguson, Toronto Star.
Hi, Minister. I note in the budget there's a $5,000 bonus for personal support workers who will commit to 6 months working in retirement homes, and $10,000 for nurses committing to a year in retirement homes. So with all the attrition problems in long-term care, nursing homes, where people are in generally a far worse medical condition, why is there nothing for PSWs and nurses there, since you're trying to build up that staffing level to get to 4 hours of care within 4 years?
Yeah, and thanks, Rob. Great question. I would say we're investing heavily in recruiting, training, and retaining personal support workers. And so that's an important feature of our plan and in our budget, as you just mentioned. I'll give you one example. We've got a program that we've already started. We're not waiting. We're recruiting personal support workers through a training program where we're funding 12 weeks of in-classroom training for anyone who wants to be a personal support worker, but also 12 weeks at a long-term care home or similar facility. Because one of the challenges we have is we get a lot of people trained up, and then they get the experience and they say, it's not for me. So I think this is a great program. In my conversations with Unifor, they raised the retention issue, and so I think this is a great program to do that. And as you know, we are going to hire a lot more personal support workers and nurses to support our long-term. We're just not waiting. I'll also say this. The second career program that we have in the Ministry of Labour, I've never met him, but I saw the story of a guy named Roger, so from Oshawa, who got laid off from the GM plant closure. And by the way, they've done a great job, Jerry Dias and many others, and the Premier and others, really fighting for jobs in Ontario. So they're reopening parts of that plant. But Roger lost his job, and through the second career program, was able to select a new career, of which we provide supports. And he said that all his life he wanted to be a personal support worker. That's what really drove him, caring for others. And so we're just on many levels going to help recruit, train, and retain the great people, the personal support workers who are doing a phenomenal job and really all the frontline care health workers across this province.
Follow-up?
So as a follow-up, what's going to happen to this, the temporary wage increases that were just recently extended to the end of June? It says they will continue to be under review. Do you intend to continue them? Do you intend to make them permanent at that point?
You know, what I intend to do is we're looking at it very closely, because I believe in supporting the personal support workers, not just financially, but I believe in supporting them through training. I believe in supporting them through making sure that we continue to build modern long-term care facilities to give them best working conditions. And so on many levels, we're going to continue the support for personal support workers and others in our front lines who are supporting care. You know, I will say, look, and you know this, the previous government built 611 beds from 2011 to 2018. We made a commitment to build 30,000. We've announced that we're already on our way to building 20,000 beds. I was part of an announcement last week up in Markham. Putting another, it's a budget highlight, $933 million. We're not waiting. That's for 80 projects, 7,600 new beds. That's a good investment in our seniors. It's the right thing to do. It's long overdue, and we're going to continue doing it.
This next question will be the last question.
From Mike Crawley at CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Terribly sorry, my line wasn't working earlier. Just back to the tourism funding. I think a lot of folks in the tourism industry are wondering what has taken so long for the government to realize their particular issues that they're facing. Why has it taken until now to get this new money specifically to the tourism sector?
Well, Mike, glad you could make it back on, and good to hear from you. You know, we already put $200 million in supports for the tourism and hospitality sector. This will add to that another $400 million, close to $625 million, so well over $500 million in multiple programs. We're putting money in the Ontario Arts Council. We're providing support for the sporting industry, for culture, for the hospitality accommodations, for those who have been impacted the most in our tourism sector. And we're going to continue that, Mike, because the battle isn't over yet with the COVID-19. As I said at the beginning, I believe our number one job is that we continue vaccinating everyone in this province who wants a vaccine, because I think that will be the quickest way and the best way for us to safely reopen the economy and help support the many great businesses in the tourism sector, but also be able to attract people to the province or people within the province to take advantage of all the great amendments that we have in the tourism sector.
Follow-up?
As a fiscal conservative, what's it like for you as someone who got elected as part of a government that promised, as part of a party that promised to cut the size and cost of government, to be tabling a budget that has nothing but red ink for years and years and years to come?
I would do it all over again. Protecting the health and well-being of the people of Ontario. We've got a war against an invisible enemy. This is what governments do. This is what responsible governments do. I'm very proud of the leadership, Mike, of Premier Doug Ford, who from day one said that an unconditional promise to the people of Ontario that we would do everything it took to defeat this pandemic. And, Mike, the job's not done. We're going to continue our fight to beat this virus. And guess what? We are going to defeat this virus, and then we're going to come back stronger. But right now, I am, as a Minister of Finance, going to support all the great members that we have in our government and really right across this great province to defeat this pandemic. And I'm very proud to do that. And I just think I would continue. I would do that over and over again, faced with a crisis of this proportion. So thank you very much, everyone.